were there to party with Castro's men when they claimed Havana on New Year's Day, 1959. When a pair of divers set the record for the longest buoyant free ascent from the ocean's bottom, it was Archerfish who regurgitated those two brave men and sent them on their impossibly long float to the surface. And with her role in the successful experiment, she gave new hope to submariners everywhere that they might survive a catastrophic accident aboard their boats. One day, while routinely doing her job, it was Archerfish who glided over and documented the deepest trench yet found in the Atlantic Ocean. Like their boat, Archerfish's crew was a reasonably good metaphor for all the others who rode in diesel submarines. At first glance, they were no different from any of the brave men who have become submariners down through history, who have chosen to serve their country in the cramped, claustrophobic confines of a boat that's actually designed to sink. They were sons of fishermen and sailors, but they were also sons of steel workers and dirt farmers and big city cops. They came from cities near the ocean, where they grew up breathing the sea air, and from the nation's heartland, where the only waves came when the prairie wind blew across vast fields of grain. But if you will take a closer look, you'll see that these men were as unique as their beloved boat and its namesake fish. They were the ones who broke the standard rules of engagement, and in the process broke the back of the Japanese Navy. Against all odds, they sent the aircraft carrier Shinano to the ocean floor, the vessel's Japanese captain voluntarily going down with his ship, dying in disgrace. They were members of the Navy's only all-bachelor crew, whose antics rivaled anything on the television show McHale's Navy, and who were later dubbed the Playboys of the Pacific. It was a moniker they richly deserved. They were the ones who steered their boat into exotic ports all around the world, many of which had never seen a submarine before. The people in those ports had certainly never seen the likes of the Archerfish crew. With equal hospitality, the submarine and her crew welcomed on board dignitaries, bee-girls, royalty, surviving members of the Shinano, school kids, a goat, members of the press, and Playboy bunnies, among others. They shot skeet off the bow, barbecued on the cigarette deck, and drew a tongue-lashing from John Wayne for not showing him proper respect. They outlasted Japanese destroyers and survived a treacherous fire. They worked hard and lived even harder. The men who became crew members of Archerfish were the lucky ones. At one point in the 1960s, there were over 300 names on the waiting list of those seeking a billet among the 60 or so who were fortunate enough to crew Archerfish then. And also in the 60s, they were the ones whose home port was movable, a mere formality to keep the paperwork straight as they steamed off for over a year at a time, dodging icebergs and tropical atolls along the way. Follow along as we track Archerfish from her birth in New Hampshire in 1943 until she died an explosive but noble death in 1968, still characteristically serving her country by doing whatever she was asked to do. Look at her more closely, and you'll see how exceptional this typical submarine was. You may well come to know and respect her as her crews did, as many of them still do. Biannual reunions draw scores of former shipmates and their families. Her alumni, most of whom also served on other subs or ships, choose to attend the Archerfish gathering even if they pass up get-togethers for their other ships. Somehow they still manage to dredge up new stories each time that no one has yet heard, and produce the photos and documents and corroborating testimony to prove them true. Their well-maintained and extensive Internet site attracts thousands of visitors. The shipmates who are still around keep in touch with each other as if their service together were only last year or a decade ago, not most of a lifetime past. One other thing. If you listen to them talk, they speak of Archerfish as if she were as much a living entity as they. That's why this is a biography. Her memory is still as alive with them as that of their departed shipmates. She may have been made of steel and aluminum, wires and pipe, but she lived and she died, just as so many of her crew have. They are determined that neither she nor they will ever be forgotten. But just like those submarine sailors whose remains are forever lost in the deep, there is no solid ground above Archerfish's head for a granite marker, no grave where wreaths can be reverently laid in remembrance. No matter. Those who knew her well believe the best way to remember her is to make certain her story is told. Told for the Archerfish crew members still alive, as well as for those on eternal patrol. Told for the thousands of submarine sailors who preceded them, and for those who still ply the planet's seas on the boomers and fast attacks, the nuclear boats. Told for those who admire and appreciate the skill and bravery of those who choose the all-voluntary silent service, even as they wonder about the manner of man who would do so. And told for anyone who loves a damn good story, populated by remarkable characters. We agree. This is the biography of a gallant lady, a diesel boat, a gloriously unique submarine, and of her exceptional crew. This is the biography of Archerfish. First Commission. 4 September 1943 to 12 June 1946. The sea, washing the equator and the poles, offers its perilous aid and the power and empire that follow it. Beware of me, it says, but if you can hold me, I am the key to all the lands. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Chapter 1. Good Scotch and Cigarettes. Malvina Thompson laughed out loud when she read the invitation that had just arrived from Rear Admiral Thomas Withers. The Admiral had addressed the letter to Mrs. Malvina Thompson. He had also felt the need to instruct her to keep in a restricted status the rather vague launch date of the submarine she was being invited to sponsor. Thompson took a long draw on her cigarette, downed another swig of scotch, and once again let loose that distinctive cackle of hers. Not only was she most assuredly not a Mrs., but the letter had also given very skimpy information. It only told her that this submarine, what was it called? USS Archerfish, was to be launched sometime in the middle of June 1943. Even if she happened to be sharing tea with some Nazi or Japanese spy, she seriously doubted that such vague details would be of much use to him. She knew from the idle conversation she overheard around the White House that they were launching submarines up there at Portsmouth, New Hampshire all the time, and floating them off to the Pacific, almost one a month by now. She figured the enemy was adept enough at espionage to already know far more about the schedule than sometime in the middle of June. Still, she was quite pleased to be asked. It was an honor to be selected to sponsor a new submarine, and she appreciated the invitation. As the First Lady's personal secretary, Malvina Thompson usually remained in the background, behind her decidedly foreground boss. She had the thankless tasks of keeping up with Mrs. Roosevelt's daunting daily schedule, and then reading it out loud to the press before each day's news conference. She had been Eleanor Roosevelt's right hand since being picked out of a Red Cross secretarial pool way back in 1917. The First Lady appreciated her secretary's hard work and efficiency, but Mrs. Roosevelt was quick to point out that Thompson's open-heartedness and sense of humor were equally valued. Actually, Thompson was quite happy about sponsoring this submarine, and was sure E.R. would not mind her taking a couple of days to go up to New Hampshire for the event. After all, Mrs. Roosevelt had experience sponsoring ships. The First Lady had christened the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, CV-5, in Newport News in 1936. There was another benefit, too. Malvina Thompson could invite her sister to serve as matron of honor, and have her niece come along as well. That would give them some time to visit during the train ride up to Boston and back. "Terrible waste of good champagne, though," she said.